May this be for God's greater honor and glory. Amen. Please be seated. This gospel from Luke talks about a call, but so also does the first reading from the book of Isaiah talk about a call. Now we know in that first reading from Isaiah exactly when this call happened, because Isaiah says in the year that King Uzziah died. That is what scholars call an historical marker. It's like saying that Jesus suffered under Pontius Pilate. Well, we know when Pontius Pilate was in Judea, and so we know approximately the time of the Lord's Passion. Similarly here, Isaiah said, I heard the call when King Uzziah died, which was in the year 742 BC. Uzziah was king of the southern kingdom of Judah, and he was king actually for 52 years. So he started out when he was 16 and lived a very long time. The call that Isaiah talks about and the call of Jesus to the apostles is something that happens to all of us too. Maybe not as in as dramatic a way, but nonetheless, we're all called. Well, how exactly are we called? Well, we're called in baptism, first of all. Even before we knew anything about it, we had people of faith speaking on our behalf, saying that we will do our best to raise this child in the faith. Then we were called a second time in confirmation, when the Lord asked that we recommit ourselves to our baptismal promises. And so we did. We had some say in that because we were older and had a chance to speak up for ourselves. We were also called every time we receive Eucharist at this table. When we celebrate the Lord's body and blood, we are called to become more perfect disciples. We're called when we get married in the sacrament of matrimony. We're called when we receive holy orders, as I did. And we're called in so many different ways that are sacramental that it's kind of easy to forget that we've been called many, many times. But there are other times when we are called in less dramatic a way. I remember about 12 years ago, we had an invitation to attend the ordination and consecration of our friend, Larry Provenzano, who was consecrated the Bishop of Long Island. And he invited my husband, Frank, and I to go. Frank was Larry's seminary classmate. And so we went up and we had a very nice time, a very nice weekend. And as we were staying with the bishop, he asked the two of us point blank, where do we go to church? Kind of shamefacedly, we said, well, we don't. And he looked at the two of us and said, well, that's about to change. As only a bishop can say that. Now, when a bishop says that, you really do have to pay attention to it. It's not as if your grandmother is saying, well, you better go to church. This is a bishop who's got some ecclesiastical clout. And he said to the two of us, well, that's about to change. So what's your zip code, he says. He's getting serious. We said 20112. So he looks up the zip code for 20112, which is Manassas, and he looked at 3 different parishes, and he looked at all Trinity and Manassas, and he said, go there, start next Sunday. Well, of course we didn't. We said, thank you very much, and we didn't argue with him, but we just kind of thought, well, we'll go when we're ready. Well, I went first. And I was really taken with how friendly people were and so forth and how welcoming they were. And I would go home and I would tell Frank, and he kind of, yeah, okay. And sort of listen and sort of in one ear and out the other, you know. Well, finally he went too, and he said, you know, you were right. They really are very friendly. We really ought to start going there. The other thing that Bishop Provenzano said when we were meeting with him is that not only should you start going to church, but he said to me, you're pretty close to retirement, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I had like 2 years to go until I was going to retire. He said, good, I've got a job for you when you're ready for it. I said, what's that? And he said, well, you're going to be a priest again. And I said, pardon me? The very last thing I ever expected out of that weekend was what he handed us. But that's how God works. That's a call. Sometimes God calls us in ways that are obvious and we're waiting for it. No, here it comes. And yes, I'm ready to answer the call. But then there are other times when God calls us and it's like, he smacks you right upside the head, like he did to us that weekend. And he did to me later on when he suggested that my priesting days were far from over. And so here I am. People say, well, how did you get here? And I said, well, it's not like I drove here. It's like it was a very long journey. So the answer to the call that God gives to us is that, first of all, we may not even see it coming. I certainly didn't. And the other piece about God's call is that God doesn't say, I'm calling you, and oh, by the way, here's your itinerary. On Monday, this is going to happen. On Tuesday, that's going to happen. On Wednesday, that's going to happen, and so on and so forth. It doesn't work like that. God will say, as Jesus said to Peter, follow me, and Peter may have had hundreds of questions. Well, where are we going? Well, you'll wait and see. When's this going to happen? He said, in good time. So there's never really a straight answer from God. It's always just follow me and, be quiet and be patient and get used to the unexpected, because that's pretty much everything that I've got for you is unexpected. As the bishop's call to me was unexpected, God's call to all of us very often can be just that, a real surprise. We need to have the courage and the fortitude and the, strength of mind and serenity to be able to answer the call in such a way as to say, well, I really wish I knew what was going to happen next, but he's not telling me, so I guess I'll just have to go along and be surprised. Let's continue to pray that God surprises us in a way that we're always willing and ready to say, yes, I will follow you. Amen. May God be praised.